An off-the-wall question to start today's show. If you had to pick one of these two teams to sweep this year, who would it be? The Raiders or the Chargers? I did not include the Chiefs because obviously I would pick Kansas City if that was an option. But I'm going to go petty, and I'm going to go with the Raiders, even though sweeping the Chargers would probably be better for this season. But honestly, I want to beat the Raiders more than any other team besides Kansas City. Now, let me know which team you'd rather sweep in the comments section. Coming up on today's show, we've got a pretty fun show mapped out for you guys where we talk about Russell Wilson smashing some records, a bold prediction coming from Bleacher Report, and then we'll do not a complete deep dive, but not scuba level deep dive, but like snorkeling level dive on Sean Payton fixing Russell Wilson, getting this Broncos team back on track, because it's been the biggest question mark going into the season, and no one has the question, despite all the articles we see about it out there, but I figured we could at least talk about that on today's show. Now, let's start things off with number 3, because Bleacher Report put out some bold predictions for this upcoming season, and one of them was that Russell Wilson sets a career high in passing yards this season. Here's what Gary Davenport wrote. Wilson was admittedly bad last year, and he's 34 years old. But it's not like Wilson to suddenly forget how to play football. As recently as 2021, he was a Pro Bowler, and he eclipsed 4,200 passing yards and threw 40 touchdown passes in 2020. All the ingredients are there for Wilson to bounce back big time in 2023. So much so that Wilson is going to do something this year he has never before. Throw for 4,300 yards. If I had to pick whether or not I was a buyer or a seller for this, I would say I'm selling. And I'm not selling because I think Russell Wilson's going to be bad this year. I just don't think it's in the cards for Russell Wilson to throw for 4,300 yards. And let me explain why. Look at Russell Wilson's career here, right? You can see his career high passing yards season by season. Got up to not a slow start in his NFL career by any stretch, but in terms of just the yardage number, had not eclipsed 4,000 yards until season number 4, and then he got into a groove, and now you kind of fast forward to these last 5 seasons where he had phenomenal numbers in 2020 and 2019. He missed some time for the first time in his career in 2021, and we know how last year went. But that's not why I'm against Russell Wilson throwing for 4,300 yards. It has nothing to do with Russell Wilson's talent level for this season. Instead, it's just, I don't think he's going to have the opportunity to do so. Look at the passing leaders from last season. Top 6 passing leaders by yards. Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Tom Brady, Kirk Cousins, Joe Burrow, and Jared Goff. When you look at the passing numbers, I want you to also look at the pass attempts. In order to throw for a lot of yards, you have to throw the football a lot, right? And that's my issue. Is no one there threw for less than 580 pass attempts? Russell Wilson's career high in pass attempts doesn't touch that. 558. He did that back in 2020. I just don't think Russell Wilson is going to be let loose to throw the football enough to get more than 4,300 yards. Only 6 guys, as we saw last year, threw for that many yards or more, and they all had a lot of pass attempts. Russell Wilson is not going to get that type of offense in 2023. Last season, Denver finished 16th in pass attempts as a team between Wilson and Rippon, and I don't think Sean Payton wants to make that number 16 closer to 1 as compared to closer to 32. I think he'd rather go up rather than down, right? Over his time in Seattle, Russell Wilson was never a quarterback who slinged the ball a ton. You can see he finished dead last or second to dead last or bottom half of the league pretty much every single year of his career. The highest he ever finished in pass attempts in a single season was 2017, and that was 16th. He never finished above 16th in pass attempts. To me, that is a big sign of Russell Wilson. He's just not designed to throw the ball that many times to finish with more than 4,300 yards. Now, you guys can predict it for me in the comment section, over or under 4,300. I'm going to go with under, not because I think Russell Wilson will be bad this year. I just don't think this offense will be designed to throw it enough for him to get that many yards, and the free agency signings kind of point that way. Added 2 offensive linemen, but 2 run-blocking offensive linemen, and Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey, a blocking tight end and Chris Manhertz, a fullback got added. What do all these point to? Denver's going to run the football a lot this year, folks. Not enough pass attempts for him to get more than 4,300 yards. Now, before we get on with the rest of today's show, you can get free Broncos YouTube content when you subscribe. Join our channel. We are trying to reach our next milestone, 14,300 subscribers. We are less than 70 away from doing so. So if you have not subscribed yet, consider going ahead and doing so. Now, let's talk about Sean Payton fixing Russell Wilson, because this is the biggest question going into 2023 for Denver. Can Sean Payton find somewhere deep down that Seattle Seahawks quarterback named Russell Wilson who was missing last year? This is what Brad Gagnon from Bleacher Report had to say. Yes, players do fade, and Father Time is undefeated, but Wilson was consistently awesome every year until 2022, and he's still just 34. In quarterback terms, that's still quite young. He also has a solid offensive line and receiving core in Denver, and Payton has shown he can bring good cogs together to create success. Look for the Broncos to become a contender with an accomplished quarterback-coach duo in 2023. I do concur with this thought here that Sean Payton and Russell Wilson together will be good for everyone. I just don't see a way that adding Sean Payton to the mix here doesn't produce a better quarterback in 2023. Mostly because he doesn't have a whole lot to have to improve from, right? The bar is not very high. He just has to throw more than 16 touchdowns, a career low for him last year, and be a bit better than 11 interceptions in 15 games. So you're not asking for Russell Wilson to go out and throw for 30 touchdowns next year. We're just asking for him to throw for maybe 20 to 24 touchdowns, right? And 10 interceptions or 8 interceptions. So these aren't drastic changes that have to be made. It's not that high of a bar to beat if you're Russ. Now, Sean Payton hopped on Colin Cowherd's The Herd last year during the fall, and they asked him, what would you do if you were the head coach of Denver? And here's what he said. I'd want to cut up of all Russell's pass plays or of 30 or more yards from the field, and I'd want to see, are there some schemes that he felt very comfortable with? Like, I know that they did a great job in Seattle of bringing him off a naked bootleg and then pulling up, and we all saw that like throwback to Tyler Lockett across the field where the ball traveled 60 yards in the air. Then I'd want to look at another film of his red zone touchdown passes inside the 20. And so what I'm asking for from assistants, I'm asking for some of his greatest hits and to make sure we have those song lyrics available. And if not, let's put them in. So these are clearly big signs of what Sean Payton is going to do this year, and Hackett did not do last year, right? Hackett last year asked Russell Wilson to throw. That was not a good option. That was a bad idea. Chapter 1, Book of Bad Ideas. That. But Sean Payton's a smart guy, and he has already talked about wanting to go back to what Russell Wilson did successfully. But the big question I have is this. Was Sean Payton hired because he's the best coach, he was the best candidate all around, and the Broncos head coaching search landed on him and said, of all the applicants, you are the best coach? Or was Sean Payton the best man for the job to fix and repair Russell Wilson? I believe the two things are different, right? Because if it's fixing and repairing Russell Wilson, well, that's going to geared more towards an offensive coach. And maybe a coach that wouldn't have caught, or a coach like Sean Payton who cost you a trade and some draft picks, including a second and whatnot. So if that's the case, Sean Payton is a good man for the job. But the question is, were they looking for someone to rescue Russell Wilson, or do they want to hire the best coach available because they know Russell Wilson's not going to be here for the next 10 or so years? But Sean Payton, he may very well be, or the next coach could be here for next 10 years. So that is where I kind of look at these two things and wonder which one of them is true. And I think it's pretty important going into the season, because if it's Denver just wanted to hire the best coach, then Sean Payton looks at Russell Wilson and goes, I want you to be successful because if you're successful, I'm successful. But my success and my longevity here is not tied to Russell Wilson. If Russ continues to stink, they'll just continue to rock go with Sean Payton and move on from Russell Wilson. Now, Grant Gordon from the NFL.com web, he wrote an interesting article about Sean Payton's history, and I wanted to share a little bit with you guys. 3 of the previous 4 coaches per NFL research led their new teams to a Super Bowl triumph within 3 seasons. Don Shula traded from the Colts to the Dolphins, Bill Belichick, Jets to Patriots, and John Gruden, Raiders to Buccaneers. All coaches who were traded for a first-round pick, like Denver this past season, giving up their first, and along with a second of next year. So when you look at what Sean Payton has done in his career, he stepped into New Orleans and immediately turned a 3-13 team around into a 10-6 NFC Championship game bound team. So Sean Payton knows a thing or two about hitting the 180 mark and getting someone from the bottom of the NFL to the top of the NFL. And there's no reason to believe he can't do that in Denver like he did in New Orleans. Now, I want to know from everyone watching, will the Broncos make the playoffs in 2023? Simple yes or no in the comment section. Sound off for me down below. Before we get on out of here, it is time for our hot summer takes. And it is 78 degrees today in Denver, so that lands us in the sunscreen take. I wore some sunscreen during the 4th of July. Probably didn't wear enough because I got some bizarre sunburns on my chest. But my sunscreen take, and it's not too blazing hot, but it's definitely not honey barbecue cold. Sean Payton will lead this team to 3 division wins. First time since Vic Fangio back in 2019. Denver, unfortunately, has not had much success at all against the Kansas City Chiefs for almost a decade at this point. The Raiders have had their number lately. They've kind of gone back and forth 500-ish with the Chargers as of late. But I think Sean Payton can find a way to get to 3 division wins, whether that's getting their first win over Kansas City and winning all 3 home games, or if it's sweeping the Raiders and splitting one with the Chargers. You can dice them up how you want. I just think some way, somehow, Sean Payton and this team are going to get to 3-3 in the division.